Hi, everyone. Hope you are all doing well today. And this is another episode of our podcast. And I'm here with Ivan. How are you, Ivan?
Hey Victor, always good to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you as well. Today, we are going to be talking about, of course, immigration and the fact that you can change your personality, your identity when moving to a new country, as we got to be in touch with a lot of different things that we are not used to in the past. And I'm very excited about this one because it goes more on the deep level of a change. And as some of you know, I used to live in Brazil, and 8 years ago, me and my wife we decided to move to Portugal, and we went through all of the difficulties and challenges related to the relocation. And Ivan, if you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about of your journey of moving to a new country, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, wow, it's a big topic. I think we're going to have a fascinating conversation, right, on this journey. Identity is such a fascinating topic, and I've really thought about it a lot over the years. So I left my home country, gosh, I'm trying to remember, 20 years ago. So since then, I've lived in, I think, 8 different countries and different places. So, and on that way, yeah, there's a lot of different stages in the journey and a lot of things I've kind of thought at one time and then I've changed my view over time. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. That identity, that there's moments I really remember where it really struck me. But I'm from Ireland originally, so I grew up in Ireland and went to school and university and had a normal enough life there. But I had a sort of a restless part of my personality. So after university, I left Ireland and worked overseas and never actually went back after that. So wasn't quite the plan, but along the way, I picked up my wife. I had a child and went from sort of expat to sort of somehow sometimes I'm walking down the street and I feel like I'm local, but everyone else looking at you or listening to you realize thinks that you're a foreigner. I've even had the situation where I go back home to Ireland and people say to me, "Wow, is it your first time in Ireland? How are you enjoying it?" And so these are some funny moments that you go through as you navigate this journey. But of course, it's been a fascinating life and the adventures I've been able to have. I mean, God, I'm so grateful for the experiences, the perspectives, the adventures that I've been able to have as a result of that. But I still proudly call myself Irish, even though it's many years since I was permanently based there.
That's a good background. What a life. It will
I've
be
been quite lucky.
very interesting to go over some topics. I'm gonna share my screen with you, Ivan, just so we can guide this conversation in a certain way. And Marian was who is our marketing manager, was able to compile some questions, and we can go over them. And it is structured in a way that will go through the beginning of the journey till the where we are now. And the first one is related to the beginning. It was in your case 20 years ago when you first arrived. What was the biggest moment where you felt, I am no longer who I was back home? It's a deep one.
Yeah, it's a big question, isn't it? And this is a really interesting question because I think at the beginning, I thought that changing country would mean I could change, right? So there's something exciting and sort of intoxicating about the idea that when you leave one place, you leave everything behind and you become a new person. And I think it was over the years I started to realize that perhaps you don't change entirely. You kind of more evolve and grow with the journey. So I do remind people that, actually the person you were before will probably be something like the person you'll be in your new life and your new identity, but you will grow and evolve on that journey. I'm thinking back to when I first moved, and I moved to I grew up speaking English. I speak English as my native language, and I moved to another English speaking country, and I realized that people started laughing when I said certain things. And this happened to me in a couple of countries that I went to. You have these colloquialisms, or you have a dialect in your own home country, and you don't realize which are the words that are only used in your place or in your location. And so I remember I was a teacher, and I was teaching little kids, and they used to break down and go crazy in the class when I said certain words. And I realized, oh, I have to start changing my identity slightly here, because if I don't switch to the way they say it here, the way they speak here, then I can't get my job done. I can't teach these kids. And so that was a sort of a subtle moment. And when I worked in the States later on, Americans would find it really funny. We say things like car park, and they say, wow, a park for a car. And we say things like footpath, and they say, wow, a path for feet. It's so funny. It's so cute. And I would use that then as a positive way. Actually, you could use it as a way to kind of charm people. I'd actually, encourage myself to use it, because it kind of broke down the ice a little bit, and people were more interested to talk to you. And I realized over the years that what I was ashamed of a little bit in the beginning, hiding that difference, trying to blend in with everybody else. Over the years, as I moved around and tried living in different places, I kind of leaned into being different. People actually prefer to listen to somebody who's got a different accent, who's got a different way of thinking and saying things, and they prefer to hear stories that are slightly different to all the other stories they've heard before. Sometimes they don't always appreciate, the background or the experiences you've had. But it's different in different places too. In some places, you're the exotic stranger. In other places, you're the foreign alien. So I had to confront that too. I lived in a couple of countries before I moved to the States, and in some countries I blended in, and some countries people were excited to meet somebody from the other side of the world. But when I went to the States, I realized in America, I was an alien. I remember turning up at the border once, coming back after a trip home, and handing in the form and the passport, and getting shouted at by the immigration officer. You said you're a resident, you live here, and I said, well, my home is here, all my stuff is here. They said, you're not a resident. You're an alien. You have a visa. You don't, you're not from here. And I was saying, where should I put in? Where am I resident? And they said, where are you from? And I said, well, I'm from Ireland. I said, put down Ireland. I said, well, I haven't lived there for 10 years. Anyway, that didn't go well. So I realized, just tell immigration officials what they want to hear in future. Don't argue with them. I probably wouldn't even get away with doing that now. It might have consequences. But yeah, you realize in some places being foreign was an asset, and in some situations, you realize there was a downside to that too, that you had to kind of confront. God, I got so many questions on this. I got so many thoughts on this topic. We could talk so long, but as a teacher, I realized, that in the class I was teaching, Irish was listed as a minority, and kids were, from that background were supposed to get extra support, and it was listed like a handicap, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. So being who I am is apparently a handicap in this context, right? So anyway, there was so many interesting journeys like that. But I love all of this, because it broadens your horizon. It opens your mind up to new ways of thinking. And I think back to that little kid growing up in the same small town where I grew up, and doing everything the same as everybody else. And now seeing things a little bit wider and broader than that. I'm grateful for that journey. Even though I laugh at all the experiences now, but some of them, not every single one of them was a joyful one.
That's very interesting, and I totally agree with you, Ivan, in a way that there's a trajectory. It's not something you just realize, oh, I'm another person, and you don't. What in my situation, I usually feel that I change when I go to Brazil to visit my family. I see that sometimes first of all, they tell me that I'm speaking in a funny way, and I wasn't even aware that I was speaking more with the
Yeah.
Portuguese accent than than the Brazilian one. But even those things I used to do as a child, such as going outside to play, to do anything Now, maybe it comes with age as well, but I'm a little bit more cautious, knowing that I'm living in a country where
Mm,
it's it's safer. So those small things that I can see that I used to live in a new reality, that little by little change who you are. So, and of course, I do have my wife here, and you start feeling a little bit more cautious, double thinking what you are gonna do before just go ahead and do it as I used to do in the past. But those small
yeah,
things, they can they can change what if you live
yeah,
in other country.
yeah. It's a really deep question. Yeah, I can relate to some of that,
Yeah,
and that different things are true at the same time. Going abroad makes you more Brazilian, more Irish, more American, more
yeah,
Canadian, because being Irish in Ireland is like air, it's just everybody is Irish, so it has no relevance to you particularly. But when you go overseas
yeah,
and you're a foreigner, then you kind of sometimes hang on to the things from home, the traditions, and celebrate St. Patrick's Day with extra vigor and things like that. And at the same time, then when you say when you go home, you realize you have become slightly different. And even to the extent, like I said, where I was in the shopping, I remember I was in the supermarket, and in Singapore where I am now, they you put the shopping basket up on the conveyor belt, and they pick the stuff out of the shopping basket. And they looked at me like, I did this in Ireland, just not thinking. And they said, wow, what kind of jerk are you? You won't even take your stuff out of your basket and put it on the conveyor belt. And I was like, oh, sorry. And then they, looking at you like some sort of foreign weirdo. And that can happen in your own home country. So yeah, your accent slightly changes, your perspectives
yeah,
change. I do also find, yeah, the things that you were kind of very familiar with, you adapt and become different. But there's also another level to it that I always advise people who were, on that journey, making a transition, especially the first time, second time, third time, that I've learned, that there's a really obvious kind of a cycle you go through, right? I always find that, leaving is really hard and intensive. It's like, moving and changing country is one of those super stressful things you do in your life. But of course, as you leave, everybody is super nice to you, right? So sometimes it's almost nice to leave because everybody loves you, wants to catch up with you, have drinks with you, have meals with you, and say how lovely you are when you're leaving the country. And then you get on the plane and it's super exciting and it's amazing, and you arrive in this new country. And I've moved several times and flown into countries I've never been to before, and it's my new home, and I'm carrying my suitcase, and it's super, you're just looking around, your eyes are so wide, all the new things you're going to experience, new adventures. But then comes sort of a week or two in, comes a bit of a crash, right? You're out of your comfort zone, you don't know anybody, you're even away from your possessions, you don't have any comforts of home. All your stuff is in a shipping container moving around the world, or in a boxes somewhere. You're staying in a hotel, you haven't found a place to live yet. And you kind of really start to the foreignness, the strange food for breakfast, the home comforts all suddenly hit you, and you think, oh my God, what have I done? How is this going to work out? I don't know anybody. And then I usually find that sort of 4 6 weeks in, you find a place to settle down, you start to get a routine, you start to get your stuff arrives, you unpack the house, you kind of settle in a little bit. And then you kind of get your bearings, and you start to get more confident to go out and to try new things and new experiences. And then it's kind of back to a high point where you're doing a lot of new things you've never done before, trying a lot of new things. And then I think of it on a deep level, right? That life is to be lived, right? And my kind of metric for life success is to squeeze into the available time the most amount of memories, the most amount of experiences, the most amount of living as possible. And the issue is that if you stay in the same place, life becomes mundane, life becomes the same old, same old. And in fact, then, 1 week, 1 month becomes, just a click of your fingers, it's gone. Whereas when you go to a new place, it's actually sort of addictive. You will actually, get a real buzz out of the fact that, taking the train is new, going to a restaurant is new, ordering something is new, going to the supermarket is new. Everything is adventurous. And My degree was in psychology in university, and I remember reading that most people's memories have this kind of a curve, right? When they're young and their teenage years and early 20s, they make loads of memories. They're first this, they're first that. And then midlife comes and they settle down and they actually make hardly any memories. Their memory density is really low. And then, of course, recent memory is a little bit higher, but there's a real sort of memory desert. Whereas what I've actually found is that by moving and changing and actually confronting that, I'm almost like a child again. I'm almost like a teenager confronting the world again. Don't know how everything works. I'm an idiot. Tell me how it works here. It's totally different to where I'm from. That actually prolongs that experience, and actually your life becomes richer, deeper in memories and experiences, and your identity is kind of refreshed continually along that journey. So yeah, you can tell that I'm an advocate.
That's all really good points, Ivan, and I do relate with your view of being a successful person. But I'm not gonna lie, before moving to Portugal and feeling this feel of living in another country and going through all of these changes, I was not aware how interesting the journey would be and how it would spark some willing to get to know to new places. Because before moving to Portugal, and we decided to move to Portugal almost by accident. We were not so. I never felt that I would leave Brazil. There was a job offer and so on, but after moving to Portugal, going through all of the challenges of finding a place to live, deal with landlords, dealing with documents, and dealing with changes, making new friends. And I was in that part of my life where I was starting to get to this stage where it was harder to find new things. I was more, I was in a very stable position professionally, and in regards to my family, my friends, they were all set. So nothing new was happening. And when I moved to Portugal, then I have to do many things again and in my way. That was really good because I was able to, me and my wife, we were able to choose where to focus our attention, where to go, and how to make it the best experience as possible, not to feel like a struggle or like a duty. So, and that really changed my perspective of what it is to live in a place, what it is good to do in life. And nowadays we try to get to know new places, and when we are traveling, we really try to imagine how life is in this specific place. How would it be to live in this place? So it just changed my perspective on like where I live and what makes me happy.
Yeah, you get to know yourself better, right? Because the friction that moving throws up, the challenge that moving throws up. Of course, any kind of challenge you go through, you get to know yourself a little bit better. What do I like? What do I really like? There's an extent to which in life we can get stuck in a I wouldn't say rut, but you get stuck in a path, or you get into a comfortable zone, and that can be accidental. I'm this kind of person, but that's just because that's the first job you got, or that's the first city you settled in, or that's kind of the friends you made. And actually you're broader and bigger and wider than that. So exposing yourself, you're increasing your surface area for exposure to new things is a way of kind of tapping into that depth and variety in your life. It's certainly a fresh start, and you discover along that journey that you're capable of so much more than you probably thought you were before. But there's certainly kind of valleys of death in that process, right? You mentioned documents and processes and bureaucracy, and kind of having to reprove yourself, and I am a real person, I really exist. I don't have all the pieces of paper that I used to just have as a citizen or as a resident here. That can be, there's moments in that journey where you think, oh my God, I just want to go home, I just want to give up, it's so painful, they're so difficult. But it's so is worth it to push through those moments, because they expose you and they open up those chances to discover so much more about yourself. And on this journey, I know that, you know, everybody I speak to discovers new elements of their personality, new elements of their identity, I guess, as we're talking about today.
Yeah, that's good. I agree, Ivan. So now, yeah, moving on to the next question related to living in between. I don't know, Ivan, if you're in this position where you have to, live in two or more countries. But basically, the question is related to living in between countries. So, do you feel like you belong more to your home country, your new country, or to neither? And how do you navigate that in between space?
I, I feel like it's the in between. It's, you know, third culture, kind of halfway across the ocean, sort of an idea. But that's a superpower, I think. I think that ability to be across two spaces, to see it, the, you know, from two perspectives, that's kind of your superpower as you go on this journey. That's what makes you kind of unique. It adds to your value and what you can bring to the world. It helps you, it enriches you as well. And you can't help but, you know, form an affinity usually with the place you go to. If you're happy, you will kind of start to see, oh, you know, they do this nicely here. You'll see, your brain will immediately go into kind of, you know, spotting differences, right? It's kind of a spot the difference, or kind of a competition in your mind. Oh, they do it differently here. Oh, they do it differently there. And that sparks a lot of thinking, right? You know, makes you, wow, why did we do it that way back home? Why didn't we do it this way? Well, how did that happen? That's really kind of, you know, makes you think. And Portugal is such a beautiful country, such a lovely place, the lifestyle, the people. And so when you're there, you can't help but feel, you know, an affinity for the place. And you do become, while I feel in between, I also feel close to, you know, in some ways you start to feel localized, I guess is the word many of us use. You sort of localize, you start to fit in, you start to, you know, have that love and affection for the place you are. It's also, I kind of always counsel people as well that look, it's a mindset about how you approach this. You can go and move to a new country and you can focus on what isn't as good or what you miss, or you can equally, you know, see the other side of the coin and see the good things, see the things that are better than they are back home, see the things that are more interesting, see the things that are better. And of course, if you're going to go on this journey and you're going to be a happy, positive person, then it's important to kind of adopt the latter mindset, right? You know, no point talking about the things that are not as good, are not as, you know, not as much as you enjoy, but, you know, embrace the things that are great in that place. So when I, you know, moved across so many different places, I didn't love every place entirely, but there were things to love in every place that I went. And when I went to, you know, certain places and they had a lot of nature and beauty, and, you know, then I wanted to make as much of that as I possibly could. When in other places the culture, the food was a highlight, then I would become that kind of a person. And I kind of enjoyed that too. You know, I wasn't, in some places I was a city person, in other places I was a hiking and swimming and mountain biking person. And because I tried to take advantage of the, you know, the great things about that location. It would be a sad way to be if you kind of want everywhere to be just like where you've come from and the way you always like things to be. Then that's obviously not the mindset that's going to work well when you kind of have an international lifestyle. So relocating is, you know, think about challenging yourself and pushing yourself into different experiences. When you move and when you're thinking where, which city, what apartment, you know, keep an open space to try out, you know, in your first place you stay for a month, try something totally different to what you've had back home and discover a new kind of lifestyle, a new way of living, and open yourself up to that. And maybe you discover something you love. If you don't, you can always go back to what you're more comfortable with. But yeah, I guess I feel an affinity for the new country. You do drift slightly away, but still have a kind of proud loyalty to your home country. And you kind of end up then being slightly in between. You're never truly one or the other anymore, which I think is a kind of makes it special.
Yeah. I Agree, Ivan, totally. And just for the fact that I decided, for example, to move to Portugal, that doesn't mean, in my mind at least, that I'm less Brazilian or more Portuguese or whatsoever. It's just this feeling that I'm me, I'm Victor, and I
Mm.
am getting to know new places, and that's okay. That's fine. That's a choice I made. People sometimes they prefer to stay in one place. That's fine as well. And agree with your view that you have to take the most of it wherever you are. So this is the beauty of being able to get to know new places, and if you can live there, the place that you choose, even better.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's a good
I always tell my
mindset.
daughter, yeah, I always tell my daughter on, when we're moving new places or going new places, life's not plus or minus. It's not an either or. You don't have to choose one or the other. Life is actually a multiplication, right? So it's Portugal times Brazil. It's not Portugal or Brazil or minus Brazil plus Portugal. You get to be multiplication. You become now, the sum, the product of those two places, which is cumulative rather than subtracting.
Yeah, 100%. So moving on to the third question related to language and identity. So how was learning or using a new language shape how has learning or using a new language shaped the way you see yourself or how others see you? In your case,
Mm.
I guess it was not. I mean, you mentioned that in Singapore people do speak good English. Isn't that it?
Well, yeah, in different countries, I this is a positive in that when I was growing up, I always thought I was not good at languages. Somewhere along the line, early in school, I decided, oh, I'm not good at languages, and all through school, I sort of suffered through my German and my French and my Spanish and different languages I was studying, and didn't really, embrace it. But then, of course, when you learn it in context, and I realized, oh wow, actually learning a language can be a great joy, can be a fascinating, fun experience. Because of course, back then I was young, I wanted to meet people, I wanted to have friends, I hadn't settled down and everything yet. So I was super eager, you couldn't be possibly more motivated to learn the language, and you get such a buzz out of kind of figuring it out on the spot. Oh, yeah, put that word together, put this word together. And then I realized, wow, organically learning a language is so much more fun than learning it in school, in isolation, not using it, not caring about it. So I kind of opened up my eyes to that. And somewhere along the line, you start to realize that a language is how you think. It's like scaffolding for your mind. And you realize that different languages have different ways of seeing the world, different ways of constructing the world. And particularly when you go beyond the European languages, you realize, that it frames how you kind of think about things. And you start to realize that, once you click into how people construct their sentences and think in phrases they use, you start to understand them in a much deeper level than if you're just translating everything back to English or stuck in one language. And even I extended even, learning to drive, for example, in a foreign country. I find that, there's a rhythm, of how life works in different places, how people walk, how people drive, how people operate. And when you kind of, after a while, when you get used to how they drive in that place, you start to realize, oh, actually, I understand these people even more now. I understand the pauses, the pace, the tempo, how people are. And of course, initially you might say, well, why do they do it this way? Why don't they do it the way I do? I grew up doing this. But once you kind of click into that, it also kind of makes you feel like, oh, and actually, I understand people on a deeper level. So these kind of languages of life, the languages or the languages of different activities you do, I think there, if you can go down that path, I certainly recommend it, because it's a definitely enriches the whole experience. And it's really fun to learn, even at a basic level, a little bit. And everyone I know who loves Portugal, who settles in there, they love to be able to speak a little bit of the language. I always describe it as if you're in your home language and they're kind of talking to you, you're kind of outside the bubble, you're kind of looking through the window. But when you can kind of engage on at least a simplistic level, and people are very understanding and very helpful, then it's like you're inside the group now. You can actually connect. It's much more satisfying experience, and you just have to jump in with the first few words, keep using them, and if once you start trying, it comes and comes. And now I don't think of myself as a person who's not good at languages anymore. So I'm glad that I kind of broke that idea in my mind.
That's really, really good, Ivan. And it was really like deep thinking on how people speak, shape the way they are in a way. And yeah, that's really interesting. And we have a surface level of understanding of culture, maybe through media and internet. Just
Mm,
for instance, Japan, we know that they are very like organized people. They are clean. They like silence. And probably there's something about the way they speak when you get to know Japanese that will fit into this culture level. So yeah, that's, and unlike you, like Ivan, I always loved learning language.
mm,
Since I was a child, I was fascinated about how people speak and how people live in a specific country. And having Italian roots, I decided to learn from the beginning that Italian. And it's funny
mm,
because it makes me happy when I speak Italian, because I
mm,
always automatically think about Italian people and the Italian in Italy. So there is a deeper, I don't know, connection regarding Italy, for example, that starts from the language, but then it also goes to these more other levels as well. And if I would love to live there, and I hope I will at one point, just to I'm be able to see how it is in fact
mm.
living in Italy, for example.
Yeah. And so with my daughter, I've always really pushed to make sure that she has multiple languages as well, because I just think it's valuable for your brain and the way things are changing in the world. I think that,
Yeah.
it's a great gift to give our kids to broaden their mind and to make them more creative, more thoughtful around these concepts, having multiple languages, because a translation really is not the same thing. You will only understand somebody when you can, think in the way they think, which is constructed through their language.
Yeah, agree. So moving to the fourth one, and it's about grief and growth. What part of your old self did you have to grieve? And what part of your new self are you most proud of?
Deep question. It's a grieving. I
Yeah,
don't know if I can recall the grieving, but
me neither.
what kind of a what does the question mean? I guess I can relate on a certain level that you kind of can leave certain things behind as you go. I think when I grew up, I was relatively, I think I am an introvert, but as we all know, these concepts of introvert, extrovert are not very, they're not very universal. They're not every situation. It's very situational, and there's a lot of nuances to it. So I think as I grew, I think I was able to kind of let go of that pressure. Of course, when you're younger, you feel you want to fit in, be like everybody else. Of course, when you're the foreigner, when you're from somewhere else, it's not really an option, right? You can't fit in and be like everybody else. You try to a certain extent, or maybe I did to begin with. But I think over time, I let go of the need to be like everybody else, to care so much about doing it exactly the way everybody else does it. And I think that's a positive thing in life. I think I've evolved from a person who was relatively shy and introverted and cautious into being a person that's a little bit more confident, a little bit more outspoken, a little bit more happy to share, because I guess I took some strength from the fact that, well, look, I have something interesting and different to say. I have a different perspective, and that gave me some confidence to share with the world. I'm proud, of course, the fact that you, like I said, at the beginning, you might feel like giving up and going back to what's comfortable, right? The comfortable always calls to us. And I think Jeff Bezos has a quote, the world wants you to be just exactly like everybody else. They kind of, that's the standard life path, I call it, right? People want to kind of put you in a box and keep you there and just do what you're supposed to do. And, Jeff Bezos tells us, we should fight that with all our might. We should, hold on tight to our individuality and our uniqueness in this world, and what we're capable of achieving. So I'm proud that I persevered in those moments, that, all of those, every journey has been massively enriching. Every new location, every new country has been so, such a great experience in my life, that I feel so lucky to have had, and brought out new things within me. So I'm glad that I kind of kept with it, that I didn't retreat, that I didn't run back to the familiar or the comfortable. Because, I think life, not just where you live, or not just these big decisions, but even the small everyday decisions is a kind of a tension or a battle between living a comfortable, easy, simple life in, doing the same thing every day, or living your big life, living your full potential. And that to me, the world is so big and there's so many things to live and experience. I just think now it's sort of a shame to live your entire life in one culture, in one place, in one lifestyle. Why not live bigger? Why not live more? Why not, be deeper in the experiences that you take forward, and expose your kids to broader and wider as well. That's just really important, I think, for what might be valuable as they chart the way ahead in a changing world.
I agree, Ivan. The fact that we decide to live in another country goes along with the need for you to overcome these difficulties. So if you need to grow, either you want or not, you need to face new
Mm.
realities. And that's a very, very good point you mentioned. Yes.
Yeah, actually, inertia and comfort zone are actually some of the most dangerous things in life. And that's what keeps people
Yeah.
stuck. That's what keeps people living small, living, doing the same thing. And that's where the regret comes at the end of the life. People wait, and then they wait too long, and then they regret, where did all the time go? Why didn't I do more, live more, experience more? So I think, how you do one thing in life is how you'll do everything in life. So this is, moving, challenging yourself, putting yourself out of your comfort zone in moving to a new country and trying to live in a new place for a while, even if it's just for a short while, I think is a great life lesson, a great rep for your muscles of, bravery and confidence, and to push outside of just doing what everybody else expects you to do, living the same life every day.
Yeah. I guess we can go to the last one, Ivan, as we are reaching the 1 hour. It's become such a nice conversation that it goes like this. So
We're probably talking too
and
much,
this
but
one,
enjoying the
no,
topics. It's
not
a very
not
interesting
really,
question.
not really good topics and good, really, really good insights you're telling. And about family expectations, do you ever feel like you carry the weight of dreams your parents couldn't fulfill? And how do you transform that weight into possibility? Does it
Oh
relate
gosh,
to
I love
you?
this
Not.
course. Miriam's coming up with very deep questions here. I don't know, she's been reading a lot of philosophy books or something. The weight of the dreams of your parents couldn't fulfill. Gosh, I mean, I think there's some truth to that. I think we all do kind of live those. I, your parents will have two hearts on this issue, right? They will be sad to see you go far away, and that's something that weighs on everybody's mind when you go away, right? That's probably the biggest trade-off, to go away from your parents, your family members, and have less time. I I have found, 20 years in, I can say that, I come from a family of four. I'm sure my siblings would disagree with me, but I don't, I kind of think that because I'm overseas, I make the effort to spend time, connect with my parents more. It's more obvious to me that I should calling, keeping in touch, because if you're just down the road, you can see somebody anytime, but you don't necessarily always see them that much. Whereas I've always made a lot of effort to spend a lot of time together, travel together, do new adventures and experiences together. Of course, your parents then, the other heart is that they are proud of you to see you go and adventure and travel new places. Your family members are quite happy and excited that they have somebody they can visit and stay with and explore and have fun with. And visiting a place with a local, even if it's a localized person who's moved there, is much more satisfying and much more fun than visiting as a tourist. So you'll have lots of people queuing up to come visit you usually. I do think of it though, in the point of view as a parent, and for my daughter, I do think of it as I think all of us as parents these days, we try to be a little bit deliberate about what kind of life and model we're giving to our kids. And so to me, I think it is, it's important that, I remember when my kid was daughter, she was telling me something. I think, she said something like, she came home from school and she said, "Oh, boys have short hair, girls have long hair." And I said, "Well, but that's actually not a rule. That's just the way it is here. In other places, it's different." And that's just a small example, but I wanted to show her that the world is more and bigger and different, and that there aren't as many rules actually. A lot of the rules that we live by are rules that we just sort of have all agreed to follow in our mind. They're not universal human rules. They're not universal, rules of life. They can be different answers to those questions. And if we want to be creative, if we want to be creating new things, solving new problems, then we have to challenge those rules sometimes. And it's, of course, every parent also wants their kid to sort of outdo them and see more, do more, achieve more. And therefore, of course, climbing new mountains, charting new territory, going wider, more, deeper. I think there's some element of truth to that, but I guess there's two parts to it. So I think it's enriched my relationship with my parents, but of course there is a little bit of trade-off there in times that you can't be there in person when you could have been otherwise. So that's the kind of bittersweet part of this.
Yeah, that's really good approach, Ivan. And I do relate to your view that at some point you will go after this connection more. We do more effort to keep in touch with with your parents, because that you've, at least I can tell from my perspective, I've made the decision to go to another country. And so in my mind, I do have to at least
Yeah.
try to make this move as, in a way, as smooth as possible in regard to our connection. So I try to call my mom almost daily, and we have nice chats, and she's curious about my living here, and I really want to bring her to Portugal at some point. But I also, the what you've mentioned about that our parents want the best for us, and coming from a country, a beautiful country that is Brazil, but with its, of course, there's some difficulties related to living in a country like Brazil. There's a safety issue, there is the politics, and so on. And in my mind, I decided to really move to a new country, looking for other perspectives, and sometimes better perspectives. And this
Mm.
is for sure something my parents, they want for me to go reach better things. And so yeah, I feel happy that I took the decision of moving to a new country. And still, I try my best to bring them to Portugal. They love it when they are here. They want to visit all the places. They want to drink Portuguese
Yeah.
wine. It's a, it's a nice
Yeah.
event. And I
Most people
feel
love
really
it.
happy when they are enjoying their trip.
Yeah. Yeah. And those moments are special.
Yeah, Ivan, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your story with us, your insights, and I mean, there's so much to we can talk about it, and you were you were very knowledgeable about those topics. You mentioned you have the background in psychology, so it was, I mean, really nice speaking to you, and I hope we can have other podcasts like this where we can share more things about moving to other countries or anything that you think it's important.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It was great to take kind of reflect upon the journey, and we're all on our own life journey. So just sharing what I've learned. But I think the density of opportunity to learn new things about yourself and about life increases when you go and live in other countries. So for those people considering it out there, then I'm very much recommending it. You won't regret it.
I agree, Ivan. Thank you. See ya. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Take care. Bye bye.